Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over some common misconceptions that you may have as a new pool owner, or maybe as a pool owner who's had a pool for a while, or a new pool pro. I'll go over some things here that will clear up some industry misconceptions and, of course, some misconceptions with your pool care. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. Is a saltwater pool a chlorine pool? And this is something that there's a lot of misconception about this, and it's still propagated out there. I think maybe overzealous sales people at pool stores, maybe even some professionals out there, and the manufacturers don't really advertise this as, the saltwater generator is actually making chlorine for the pool. It's not something that they really put front and center in their literature. For example, I'm a big fan of Jandy. I like their True Clear cells, and I have the brochure in front of me, and on the cover it says simple, reliable saltwater chlorination. So the word chlorination is in there, but then they use the term saltwater chlorination, which I guess would say is a fair way to describe it. The salt is actually being converted into chlorine in the salt cell, kind of like a mini factory. So basically it just says easy to use, easy to maintain. I'm just reading through here real quick to see if I can see anything that shows how much chlorine it makes. And then at the very bottom, at Pro Specs, it says produces 18 grams per hour of chlorine for pools up to 35,000 gallons. So that's kind of where they have the actual fact that it makes chlorine, is at the very bottom where it says Pro Specs, which is for the pool professional to look at, and we can see, it's going to make this amount of chlorine for this size pool. So a saltwater pool basically is like a little chlorine generating factory. It produces chlorine when you add the salt to the pool. The sodium chloride is the salt you add. It'll pass through the salt cell, and the reason why the salt system is plugged in, there's electricity that will use the electrolysis, to convert the salt into chlorine, sodium hypochlorite, and that's what sanitizes the pool. So it's a pure form of chlorine, but it's chlorine nonetheless. If you were to do a test in the pool, the test for chlorine, you're going to get a chlorine reading in that pool. So I don't think anyone should at this point, but there are people that still don't understand this, believe that a saltwater pool is not adding chlorine. In fact, I would say, contrary to what you think, the saltwater pool will add more chlorine to the pool than if you were to manually add it yourself. If you're using 3-inch trichlor tablets or liquid chlorine or cal hypo, the saltwater pool is so effective at making chlorine in most cases, if you have it operating correctly, that it's going to produce more chlorine than you can even think of putting into the pool. I've had some saltwater pools that were putting in 20 parts per million of chlorine. If you leave your saltwater generator unchecked, which means that you don't adjust the percentage or don't adjust how long the pool runs for, and if you leave it on 100% output, you can add a lot of chlorine to the pool. In fact, like the Pentair IC40 cell does about 1.2 pounds of chlorine per day. And that's like adding about a gallon of liquid chlorine every day to your pool. You can imagine if you just had a 10,000 gallon pool, that would be adding enough chlorine to bring it to about 30 parts per million in just a couple of days. So contrary, the saltwater generator or saltwater pools actually produce more chlorine, and they are definitely a chlorine pool. Here's another one that's kind of on the same vein here. And since I talked about liquid chlorine tablets and cal hypos in just the last minute, I'll also go over something that I think is important to know, is that all the chlorine types are not the same. There's actually 5 types of chlorine or actually 6 types that were readily used back in the early 2000s, but a lot of those chlorine types just aren't used anymore, like gas chlorine. Dichlor is still being used, I think, by some people, but it's probably not as common as the 3-inch trichlor tablets, liquid chlorine, and cal hypo. So I'm going to focus on those 3 here specifically. And I'm going to say that they're vastly different, mainly because of the byproduct that they add to the pool. Everything that you use in the pool has a byproduct. Anything in nature, anything basically that's, in the real world has a byproduct of some type. So for liquid chlorine, that byproduct is salt. And for CalHypo, that byproduct is calcium. And for trichlor tablets, that byproduct is cyanuric acid. So if you're using any of these chlorine types, you should know they're adding a byproduct to the water, either salt, calcium, or cyanuric acid to the water. And there really is no chlorine type that doesn't have a byproduct. You may say, well, what about the saltwater pool? It's making chlorine at the pool side. There shouldn't be any byproduct to that. But like I said, everything has a byproduct. And the byproduct of the chlorine generator or making the salt or making the chlorine for your pool in a saltwater pool, the byproduct because of the chlorine generation is sodium hydroxide, NaOH, which is a strong base, and this byproduct raises the pH in the pool. So even the saltwater generator has a byproduct, which is sodium hydroxide, which raises the pH in the pool. Which byproduct is the one you can live the most with? That's for you to decide. If you're in an area where your pool's calcium hardness is low, then of course CalHypo would be perfectly fine because you're adding calcium to the water. But if the calcium levels are low in your fill water and in your pool, that helps you balance the pool. And the calcium hardness is one element of the LSI index, which helps keep the pH in balance in some cases, depending on the calcium hardness level. And also, if you're using trichlor tablets, you're adding cyanuric acid to the pool. And if you have a pool where if you're in an area you get a lot of rain, or if you want to do partial drains, then the cyanuric acid really isn't anything to worry about. It's not a byproduct that I would be concerned about as long as the pool water is being diluted on a regular basis. And then, of course, liquid chlorine adds salt to the pool. Salt is an element of your total dissolved solids, and it's probably the one that affects the pool the least. And so I would say out of those three, if you're in an area where the calcium hardness is normal, where you don't get a lot of rain in your area, so you don't want to add too much cyanuric acid to the pool, then liquid chlorine would be a good chlorine type to use because it's just adding salt to the water. Of course, I think the saltwater generator, in my opinion, is the best way to add chlorine to the pool. I could live with the byproduct of having higher pH. There's ways to control that. You can add borates to the water to help buffer the pH. You can keep your alkalinity at 80 parts per million. That'll also help with the pH going up. And so for me, a saltwater generator is an easy byproduct to deal with. But of course, it's all regional and it's something you should decide. So the answer to that particular misconception is that all chlorines are not the same. And even the percentage of chlorine in every chlorine type is different. CalHypo, usually you're at 70%, 72%, 73%. Liquid chlorine is at 12.5%, but that's a liquid measurement, so don't think that it's weaker than the rest. It's actually probably just as strong as 1 pound of CalHypo and just as strong as the trichlor. It's just a different percentage. And trichlor will, of course, be anywhere from 90 to 99% active chlorine. And you can compare the active chlorine across the board using different apps out there. But I can say that the strength of each chlorine, of course, is not based on the active chlorine or the weight of the product. And you can use, again, online calculators to find out how much CalHypo equals 1 gallon of liquid chlorine and so forth. So they're all different chlorine types with different byproducts. So they're definitely not the same. Here's another one that is something that we struggle with in the industry to convince customers that is necessary, and that is draining and refilling the pool. How often should you drain the pool and refill it? It's a matter of course, region. And if you get, again, a lot of rain in your area, you're probably not draining the pool as often as areas like Southern California. But however, the last 2 years, we've gotten probably about 60 inches of rain, which is really unusual. And if you do pool service over here in my area, it's one of those things that in LA County, we really haven't experienced 2 seasons of rain of this magnitude as far back as I can think. Maybe 2004, 2005, we had a pretty rainy season that's similar, but nothing as dramatic as it has been lately. Parts of Texas, of course, parts of Florida get a lot of water. So there's not a lot of need to drain the pools completely. And I think this is where a lot of that kind of comes from, is that, I don't need to drain my pool because the water's being diluted continuously. And so a lot of the things in the pool that don't evaporate will dilute, and there's no need to drain the pool. In some cases, there's some truth to that. In other cases, really, there's not as much water getting into the pool as you think, because your evaporation rate may be higher than the amount of rain that you get in a season. If you get 30 inches of rain in a season, but the pool water in the summer evaporates 30 inches, I think it's pretty much a wash at that point, and you're not really gaining anything by the rainwater that you're getting, and the dilution is not as big of a factor. The only way to really tell what's in the water is to test the pool. The biggest things that you want to drain the pool for, of course, are nitrates. If you get nitrates in the water, nothing is going to keep the chlorine level in that pool stable. And you can add 20 pounds of liquid chlorine, 20 gallons of liquid chlorine, I should say, and it still would be zero the next day in a lot of cases if there's nitrates in the water. So you can test with a test strip for that. Another thing to test for is cyanuric acid. If the cyanuric acid gets to 200 parts per million, theoretically, if you drain half the water, you're down to 100 parts per million, which is livable. And so then I would consider a partial drain. If you're at 200 parts per million, drain the pool down halfway, and then you'll be at 100 parts per million. That is if the cyanuric acid test is accurate. And if you're not sure it's accurate, I can tell you it's probably not accurate. Anything over 80 parts per million becomes very inaccurate. And even a dilution where you're using half tap water and half bottled water and half pool water will give you a reading that's maybe not as accurate as you think it is. So anything over 80 parts per million, it becomes harder and harder for you to get an accurate cyanuric acid reading. So the pool could actually be at 300 parts per million and you drain it halfway and then you're still at 150 parts per million. What's a good cyanuric acid level? I would say under 100 parts per million would be where I would want your pool at, but everyone's different, and some people say don't let it get past 50. Some say let it get past 80, but I go off of what the LA County Health Department recommends currently for commercial pools, which is 100 parts per million, and then they'll make you drain some water when it gets above that amount. And the higher cyanuric acid level, there's not much difference between 80 and 100 or 60 and 80, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you're in the 200 or 300 range, you definitely want to do a full drain. So test the cyanuric acid. Lamont is a testing company that makes the Color Q and then the Spin Touch. They have a cyanuric acid test strip that goes to 500 parts per million. It's a pretty good test strip, and I think it's accurate because it's formulated to get the high cyanuric acid reading. So if you have a pool and you think you're like at 300 parts per million, I would definitely order the Lamont cyanuric acid test strips. You can get them online. Some pool stores may be able to order them for you. And those go up to 500 parts per million, and that gives you a more accurate way to tell how high the cyanuric acid level is in the pool. But there is something called total dissolved solids. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because it's something that can be tested with a digital meter. And basically, if your TDS level gets to a certain point, the pool water gets kind of funky and hard to kind of manage. And if you do pool service, you know what I'm talking about. Weird things kind of happen when a TDS level gets too high. I'll just read you quickly the list of the elements of TDS. One is salt, and then salt's broken into 3 categories: sodium chloride, calcium chloride, and magnesium chloride. Then there's metals, and of course, metals are not really good to have in the water, and this could be part of TDS: copper, iron, and manganese. And then you have organic matter, and you have some inorganic matter like phosphates, nitrates, which I talked about earlier. And then you have, of course, chemicals like cyanuric acid, sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda, calcium hypochlorite, and sodium bisulfate. And how do you manage your TDS level? What is a general rule of thumb? You want to stay below 1500 parts per million. How do you get this reading? You get a digital TDS meter. You can find these online or at your local pool store. And then, of course, here's something that you really need to know about TDS is that you're not testing the pool water and getting the reading without, of course, testing the tap water, because your tap water has a certain amount of TDS in it. You're going to take the tap water reading and subtract it from the pool water reading, and then you're going to have a pretty accurate TDS level of the pool. So let's say that I'm going to just make this example simple. Let's say your fill water is 500 and then the pool water is 1500. You'll subtract that, and then your TDS is 1000. So it's not technically 1500 parts per million. It's only 1000 because you're taking the tap water and subtracting it. And then, of course, if it gets that high, you'll need to drain your pool, at least partially or completely. So I would say that you don't need to drain your pool is definitely a misnomer. you do need to drain your pool if these levels that I mentioned get out of control, because even with rain, dilution is not going to solve the problem in some cases, and you're going to have to test for high cyanuric acid, high TDS, or nitrates in the pool, and those would be the three main factors that I would consider draining your pool for. Here's one that I often get, and this is something that I have a hard time convincing the customers about, but then I of course explain some logic here, and the logic is, or their thinking is, if I run my pool at night, I'm going to save money on electricity because the pool motor is running and then everything else is off at that time. Usually, sometimes the air conditioner maybe, but everything is off. And so I'm not going to use a lot of electricity during those hours because the pool is a big consumer, at least if you're not using a variable speed pump. And of course, with the variable speed pump, you don't have to worry too much about that. But a lot of customers still have the single speed pumps and they still want to run them at nighttime. There's a couple problems with running the pool at nighttime. The main problem is if there's a problem with the pool, let's say there's a leak or there's something that happens at the plumbing and you're running the pool at nighttime, you're not going to know about it because it's nighttime and you're not out there watching it. And I've had this happen before where a pool had something break on it. The customer had it running at night and they actually had to call the fire department out because the neighbor downslope was getting his backyard flooded by the broken pipe and the pool was running. It was like 1 a.m. when the pool was running from like midnight till 8 a.m. And so they called the fire department. They came to the backyard, turned off the system, and to stop the flooding going into the neighbor's backyard. But that's the danger of running the pool at night. If there's a problem with the pump or with the filter or something happens, if there's something clogged in the line, you're not going to know about it because you're not able to see the water flowing. You're sleeping usually. And so running the pool at night has inherent dangers built into it. Another problem is that if you're running your pool, let's say you're running it from 10 p.m. till 8 in the morning, then that means that during the peak sunshine times of the day, the pool is just there, not moving, still water. The sun's hitting it, the chlorine's not being circulated, and algae has a good chance of forming in that pool because it's not moving or circulating when it should be, which is during the peak hours of daylight. So I would suggest running your pool typically from 9 a.m. till about 6 p.m. at night if you have a single speed pump. If you have a VS pump, I would start a little earlier, maybe 7 a.m., and I would run that all the way till about 8 or 9 p.m. at night, depending on your pool size, of course. And that way the water is circulating the most when the sun is hitting the pool, when the water really needs to be circulated. And it doesn't really do any good to run the pool at night, at least in my area, because I have Southern California Edison as my provider, and I don't have time of day usage. Now you can call Edison and you can tell them that you want to switch to time of day usage. And that means that on the off-peak hours, it's going to be cheaper for you to run your washing machine or run your pool. However, if you do use power during the peak hours on the time of day service, you're going to pay more for the kilowatt hours. And I just prefer the tiered system, tier 1, 2, and 3. And when you get to tier 3, you're paying the most for the kilowatt hours of energy. And most people are on the tiered system of power usage. And very few, I'm speaking for California and Southern California, are on any kind of time of day usage billing. So even running the pool at night doesn't matter because you're being billed for the kilowatt hours for the whole month. It doesn't matter if you run the pool at midnight or at noon because they don't care. They're not calculating your electricity costs based on the time you're running your appliances. I think I have time for one more, and that is dog swimming in the pool, or my dog swimming in the pool is not a problem. And I would say if you're a dog lover, you probably aren't going to find much fault in your dog swimming in the pool. But if you're a pool service professional, you're going to find a lot of fault with the dog swimming in the pool. First of all, the dogs bring a lot of dirt into the pool. Dirt's not great for the pool because a lot of times there's metals in the dirt, there's organics in the dirt, there's contaminants in the dirt, and the dogs walk in with their paws. Sometimes they'll step in their own waste and get into the pool. Dogs, of course, don't wipe, and so there's always going to be some kind of residue on the dog from when they go to the bathroom. Dogs, not necessarily will pee in the pool. I think kids are more known for that than dogs, but their chemistry, their body chemistry, and all the oils on them really make the pool water, really affect the pool water negatively, and the chlorine level gets destroyed pretty rapidly when dogs are swimming in the pool. I mean, I've serviced accounts where there's been one dog swimming. It's fairly manageable. It's not the greatest thing. And then you have a pool with two dogs swimming. It becomes harder to manage. And if you have a pool where you have three or more dogs swimming, it becomes almost impossible to manage and maintain that water. And it almost becomes impossible for that pool not to get cloudy on a regular basis because, I don't know if this is true, and I've heard this before. And here I am doing a podcast on misconceptions. Probably should look it up. But, one dog is like 10 people swimming in the pool. And I think I'm wrong there because I just looked it up also, and it says one dog. One source says one dog is like 40 or 50 people swimming in the pool. So a dog is actually much worse than I thought. But if you do pool service, you know that dogs are not good, and dogs really ruin the pool. It almost makes it, useless to clean the pool sometimes. I've done pools where dogs love getting in there, and what I've had to do is I clean the pool, the dog gets right back into the pool. I just tell the customer, I was there, your dog just got right into the pool after I cleaned it. So understand that cleanliness is not going to be something that I'm going to be able to provide for you because the dog's going to be in the pool, and you're going to have to pay a surcharge for more chemicals. But dogs in the pool basically will destroy the chlorine level. They'll make the pool water cloudy. They bring a lot of stuff into the pool. I don't think you want to be swimming in the pool when a dog's swimming in the pool because of all the junk they bring into the pool and their body oils and dirt. It's something that you shouldn't do, but most people will let their dog swim, and I can't stop them. And it's something that they just need to know that the dog does have a really negative effect on the pool water, and it's something that is out of my control. And once a customer knows that, it's not a big deal to me if the dog swims in the pool, really, because I go there, I clean the pool to the best of my ability. They'll pay for the extra chemicals, for the pool RX, for the enzymes that I'm putting in the pool. And they're very understanding that the pool is not going to look pretty because their dogs are using it. So to me, it doesn't bother me, but it is one of those misconceptions that people have that a dog doesn't really affect the pool. It does affect the pool very negatively, but I think a lot of people tune that out because they love their pets and they love their dog swimming and relaxing in the pool. And I'll admit it, sometimes it looks kind of cute when a dog's in there. Not quite that cute after I clean the pool, get everything all dialed in, and then the dog jumps right in with his dirty feet. But it's one of those things that is unavoidable out there in pool service. If you're looking for other podcasts I've recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingprolearning.com. On the podcast icon, just click on that and you'll have 1,400 podcasts to listen to. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Real quick, if you're not using pool service software, try Skimmer free for 30 days at getskimmer.com/poolguy. Again, that's getskimmer.com/poolguy. Skimmer, everything you need to run your pool service business all in one app. Pool Service Pro, open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.